Hello, my name is Habib Khan and welcome to episode 2 of Famous People's Routines. In this video, we'll be breaking down the habits and routines of Elon Musk. He is worth $209 billion as of today. He is not a robot, so we are going to see what this human has done other than be the founder of Tesla and SpaceX, making cars really efficient, as well as making space exploration more possible and cheap. So Elon Musk is someone we can learn from, just as in this video series, I am breaking down the habits and routines of successful people so that even if you don't like something about them, there's still something to learn from them. So without further ado, let's get into exactly what his routine is. And so there's 3 parts. There is his daily schedule, his weekly schedule, but more important than those 2, there is the life philosophy and the habits that run his life. So I'm actually going to be going into that first because I think that's way more important. So the first thing that he does is he works super hard. That's what he says, works super hard. Now, what is that? He's working anywhere from 80 to 120 hours a week. It is really important to find something that matters. He says, work super hard. And what is that for? That's to, what that means is sleeping in the office, sleeping in the factory, and working all day. When he was younger, he would sleep at the office and he'd run a website where during the day he would just make sure it's up, and then at night he would be coding and his girlfriend would have to sleep in the office with him. And so he basically drags his family and friends into whatever he's working on. So that is what that means, work super hard. So is there something that is challenging enough, meaningful enough to you that you're working on that is going to make you want to work super hard? So the thing that he says is that you want to work twice as hard as the competition, because if the competition is working 50 hours a week and you're working 100 hours a week, then you'll come out twice as far by the end of the year. So working super hard is an essential ingredient for him to beat the competition, because business is such a competitive sport. So his second habit is to attract great people. And you can't really, even an introvert like Elon, he can't accomplish very much without a team, without people, without more people to balance him out. And a company is nothing but a collection of great people providing a great service or product. That's how he sees it. And so he says to either join or create a company full of great people. So if you can't create one, definitely join a company of great people. And how do you know they're great people and not just good people? Because they're passionate, they're working hard, they're matching your level of optimism and enthusiasm. If you can tell how enthusiastic Elon is, he messages his employees at 2 or 3 a.m. and he'll, also work himself, on the weekends, and employees are probably expected at some level to do things like that. So it's important for you to be yourself, be your authentic self. And if it's working super hard, if that's your authentic self, then you want other people who are great in that sense, that they're also working super hard. But if you have some other style, you want to be around people who have that style of working. It's, I think, one way that Elon has developed culture, where people are very enthusiastic about solving challenging problems like sustainable energy in the vehicles, as well as space exploration and becoming a multiplanetary species. The third life habit that he has is concentrate on signal over noise. So concentrating on signal means that focusing on what actually makes a product better. Now you can apply this to anything really, not just work, but you want to focus on what actually makes your product or your life better. If the efforts aren't helping the product, then you should stop. For example, he didn't advertise Tesla. He just focused on making the Tesla car better, cheaper. So concentrating on signal over noise is a way to go. Identifying what is noise, that's the hard part. And taking some time to stop the process and identify what is noise and what is signal, and to actually pay attention to the proper metrics. Fourth thing is to not follow the trends. He believes in the physics approach of first principles, where you want to reason up not by analogy, but you want to reason up from the fundamental truths of whatever domain you're discussing or whatever problem you're solving. There are always deeper subcomponents that you can break everything down into their fundamental truths and reason up from there. So, for example, if you're creating a website, rather than thinking of like using a random website generator or something, you can think about what is a website. Oh, okay, there's HTML. So rather than going to WordPress, there's actual other ways of developing a more innovative approach to developing a website, for example, that don't have to do with what's already out there or what other people have reasoned to be. You want to create the innovation, so you're going to have to understand the subcomponents of your domain. If that was building a website, that would be an example. So just don't just follow the trend. Don't just use what other people are using. There's some things that you can discover by creating a new path. And so, reasoning up from the fundamental truths, finding out what is the most fundamental part of your problem that you're solving. Okay, so the fifth life habit is to take risks. So as he was giving a speech to the college kids, as he was giving some commencement speech at some college, he was saying that now is the time to take risks. Many of those people don't have kids, so your obligations increase as you get older. And even as you get more kids or your parents start aging, your family gets more and more burden if you take the risks later and later in life. So do something bold and you won't regret it. Now, Elon is someone who's benefited a lot from taking risks, and he has balanced that with actually working very hard on the risks that he's taken to mitigate those risks. I actually think that he's somewhat risk aversive, in that by working hard, you're increasing the likelihood of success. And so unless you're really prepared to work super hard, taking risks is not always the best option. Just take the appropriate level of risk that correlates with how hard you're willing to work. That's at least my take on this. So, but he does say, you want to take risks, especially at a younger age. All right, so Elon's weekly schedule is very simple. He works at 2 different companies, SpaceX on Monday, then he goes to Tesla for Tuesday, Wednesday, then he goes back to SpaceX on Thursday, Friday, then he goes back to Tesla on Saturday, Sunday. And anyway, it's a fucking mess. Holy shit. But he's going back and forth. Why? Because there are 2 priorities he has, and he actually sees it as very important to solve both of these problems. Like, it means that much to him. And so the kids will get dragged around to the factory even, and he'll only get about 6 hours of sleep. And he has a $50,000 mobile home near his SpaceX factory where he actually goes to. So he doesn't even really, even if he's a billionaire, he doesn't even live expensively. He doesn't have great nutrition. But he does try to spend some time with his kids. So outside of whatever time he is able to spend with his kids, he is spending a lot of time between his 2 companies, SpaceX and Tesla. So given that a person is actually able to do this, that makes you wonder, like, are the companies and projects you're working on actually meaningful to you? Do they actually strike that passion? Do they actually make you want to go back and forth, fly back and forth between two different cities just to be able to work on two different side projects or startups or businesses? Like, the amount of passion you have to be able to maintain a schedule like this week after week is insane. It doesn't matter what your IQ is. If you're actually able to hold excitement for two different projects, two different companies, then that's incredible. It's something to model after. And I hope that you're able to at least understand that, hey, maybe I do need to work on something that matters more to me than what I'm currently working on. His daily routine is actually quite simple. He starts off with a breakfast that's optional. He'll either eat something like an omelet and he'll have coffee, or maybe he'll forego the omelet or the coffee as well. And so it's very optional. Showering. So after breakfast, he continues his morning routine with a shower where there's a lot more creativity and free association. And so you're able to solve problems a lot better in the shower. And this is something that Elon has spoken about. And so taking those kinds of breaks, those restorative activities that get you away from the desk to actually be thinking actively about the problem, away from the problem, it's a very interesting tool to solve problems better. And one of the interesting things about his routine when I was researching is that he actually does do some exercise twice a week. He will lift weights, run, or do taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, that kind of thing. And he mentioned on the Joe Rogan podcast that he doesn't want to be exercising. He would skip it if he could, but he kind of had to. He had to actually exercise because that makes his body more efficient and it makes him think a lot better. So it's super interesting that he had to find this out in some weird way, that exercise is good and he can't just skip it. And so in the afternoon, he's working 42 hours a week on Tesla and 40 hours a week on SpaceX. So whether he's using his phone to work for whatever company and to send messages, or he's scarfing down lunch, he's always working. So he's always on, and he's making decisions, probably delegating tasks, and he's probably making everything efficient so that people are solving problems and he's not having to manage people all the time. He is spending a lot more time. He spends a lot of time in the factories, and he actually understands how everything works. Like, he understands how the manufacturing process works. So he spends a lot of time in the factory, in the office. He's even slept there 3 or 4 days in a row. He doesn't leave. He works very hard. He works hard at the expense of seeing his kids and his friends. So in the evening, he has a huge dinner. A lot of times it's actually with, networking people, like people in his company, people who will have like a business connection. So he'll actually have those huge dinners. Sometimes he'll actually go home and spend time with his girlfriend. He watches TV shows, anime. He does do some gaming. He also reads and listens to podcasts or audiobooks. And he sleeps about 6 to 6.5 hours a night, ideally. He's tried less, but his mental acuity will drop if he does any less than that. Another really interesting thing about Elon is that he solves big problems, or he seeks to solve big problems. And I think this is really the underlying principle that drives his life, is that he finds really challenging problems and he thinks about it over decades. when he was in college, he came up with these 5 ideas that would be challenging for his time, which are still hard today. And you can tell that he's gotten involved in many of them, if not all of them. He thinks that the 5 biggest challenges in the world are artificial intelligence, genetics, the internet, space exploration, and sustainable energy. So by working on these 5 problems, or whichever one of these 5 problems, he's able to be really energized, because the amount of responsibility that he takes and enjoyment that he gets from working on really challenging problems, it's very stimulating for his brain. And it makes him very excited to get up in the morning and to even go traveling between cities and states, just to get more work done. Elon is really taking care of, for example, making life multi-planetary. That is why he's able to get up in the morning. I think this is one of the biggest reasons why billionaires are the way they are, is that they have found a way to attach themselves and their identity to a really huge problem. Like, you think about Jeff Bezos, who we did a video on last week. These are people who are attaching their own identity to really big, challenging problems. And it makes you want to work super hard. It makes you want to find great people. It makes you want to focus on signal over noise. It makes you want to do all those things that is required for someone to actually solve these problems. It makes life worth living. It makes, people happy to be working with you, around you. So, in conclusion, you want to be working super hard with focus and concentration. Don't just follow the trend. Imagine the fundamental truths of what you're doing. We can all take more risks and live frugally. And just remember that Elon did not ignore sleep, family and friends, nutrition, or exercise. He definitely tried. He tried to ignore those, but he couldn't. So he still slept at least 6 hours a day. He still had some connection with his family and friends. And to the extent that he didn't, he suffered. He still had some nutrition, even though he did neglect it at times. He did exercise at least twice a week, or about twice a week. And so even for someone like Elon with a 155 IQ, he still realized that he needs to do some of these human things. So that's how we know he's not a robot, is that he actually still has to do all these seemingly mundane things to maintain the body. So I'm excited to say that you can copy his routine at habitapp.com. If you really enjoyed this video and how in-depth of research I've done for this, I want you to like and subscribe, because next week we'll be covering Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. And there's a lot of interesting things that a person can do to innovate at this level and to create a life that is both personally fulfilling and externally, and is having a lot of impact on the external world and the universe.